I'm Matt.
Hey, I'm Steve.
Hey, I'm John.
This is the Sober Friends Podcast. We're here for the sober curious, the new guy, and the old timer. We're here to talk about the stuff anyone looking to live alcohol-free has to face day to day, and how we overcame those struggles. We speak for no 12-step group, but we do try to remain anonymous. You're not alone. This is the Sober Friends Podcast. Steve, I'm realizing while I am thinking of our topic, there were phone calls I should have made this week with a few things that happen around the household. And I just fall into that trap where I could call people for help and I don't.
Yeah.
Am I alone with that?
No, not at all. I mean, some people just do it better, right? Some people, we talk about what tools we use, and that is a habit forming thing, right? And I don't do it as well as I should. If we're if we're used to picking up the phone and calling people just to check in, then we're likely to do it in those times where we need it. And if we're not, I'm in the same boat. I'm not as much as I should be. We don't. And I have a bit of myself to think, I should work some of this stuff out on my own, right? I mean, some of that is happening too. It's like I should, at this point in my life, be able to work through stuff. And typically, most of the time, I'm able to do that. I probably suffer a little bit longer with some of that stuff than I have to. If I picked up the phone, then I'd probably be able to get through it a lot quicker just to talk to somebody. We all know, like, when we do that, when I call you, when you call me, when we talk to another alcoholic, you immediately usually feel better. It's a little bit like everything else in life, eating healthy, exercising, all those things that are good for us. Some people do them really, really well all the time. And people like me, I struggle with doing a lot of them. I went on a hike with the boys yesterday and went up to Monadnock. And it just, I told them, like, I came home and I'm not in shape to hike the mountain we hiked. And I came home and my legs were cramping. And I was telling John and David about it. And I'm like, it's just that, it's the bill came to be paid, right? Like, that's me getting out of shape. And it's like, and it was, for a point there last night was excruciating. But again, that's just like, okay, this is what happens when you let that go. So that's the whole thing, right? Like, it's the same thing. And that's part of what I do or what I don't do on a regular basis. And it's the same thing when it comes to reaching out and picking up the telephone.
Mm-hmm. I have been really good at getting 10,000 steps a day, sometimes more. I've built a habit. And this ties into, if I can't do one thing one day, or if something goes wrong, everything is wrong forever. It's rained in Connecticut the last few days, so it's been difficult just to get outside to take a walk.
Right.
And I'm not at my step count that I normally am, so I'm feeling it's over. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to do my steps anymore.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to get fat.
Right. That I'll tell you, that is a struggle, man. That's that all or nothing thing, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the same thing. It's the way, like I said, I have these visions of me having, a nice little glass of tequila with one of those nice big round ice cubes in it, sitting there watching the sunset or something. But I didn't drink that way. I'm an all or nothing guy, right? So, and that's why I get out of shape too, right? Like, it's like, when I'm working on staying in shape, I'm all in and I do a really good job about all the aspects. And when I'm not, I do a really good job at not being in shape. Mm-hmm. It's that all or nothing, and that, the world is going to end because I had 4 slices of pizza last night,
Mm-hmm.
So
I will tell you what, counting my calories with an app has been helpful with that.
Yeah.
Because if I'm good during the day, then I don't have to feel guilty about the 4 slices of pizza.
Right.
Because I have measured my calories out and looking, I'm like, okay, if I have 4 slices of pizza, I'm still good. Right. This is fine.
I did so much of that, and I still can. And actually, I liked when I was doing it. I know that you're doing it. And when I was doing it, I found it helpful. But it's another one of these things, and I don't know if it's true or something I'm just playing with my own head, is like, I should be able to manage my life without that app, right? I should be able to manage what I eat in that without it, right?
Right.
And really, and I think, okay, at this point, I should be able to manage it without it. Maybe that's a lie. Maybe it's not a lie. and it certainly has it's gotten to me to this point. But typically what happens is it's like everything else in that situation. If I was using an app and I started going really off the rails, I would stop using the app anyway. I mean, I'm not going to put in the app that I ate 4,000 calories, right? I just wouldn't do that. So, it's all about that thing. It's all about those habits. It's all about staying on track. Listen, there's another fellowship for that aspect of our struggles. But for reaching out for help, it's like, it's one of those tools. And listen, life's not easy. I mean,
No, it's not.
Nobody promised us that just because we got sober, we're going to have a great life. All they promised us is that we'd be able to handle some of this shit without drinking. It really, all that is promised to us is that we can do it without drinking. And if we follow these steps in this program, we can probably handle it in a better way on most occasions. And listen, if you sit in the rooms and you talk to enough people and you listen to enough people with long sobriety, they'll tell you that they've learned how to handle most of these things. I still struggle with a lot of these things. Like I still struggle with that simple little thing of not getting in an argument when I could easily de-escalate it, right? Something,
Right.
it's like, no, I'd rather escalate it. And, so still struggles, but hey, that's why I keep showing up. That's why I keep doing what I do.
Yeah, for me, I need to keep doing those things, and I'm not perfect at it. And this is a life's on life's terms thing for me, too, is being okay at not being perfect at recovery, of not being able to have mastered all this stuff after 10 years. I think I am going to continue using Chronometer for my food, because it works and it keeps me mindful. And when I'm super hungry and I only see apples in the fridge and I see all of the other garbage that's in this house, it still keeps me from just having the apple, because the apple has good nutrients in it, but that other crap doesn't. And then I got to log it in.
Right.
So that accountability and that habit of logging it in and making good food choices makes some benefit to me long term. This was not a great week, and it's one of those things of life on life's terms that this is the time that everything is going to fall apart, at least in my mind, and it's not. During the week, my daughter was screaming. My youngest daughter put some makeup on. She put lipstick under her eyes and couldn't get it off, and she's crying, and I run in to see what's wrong, and she just snaps at me and runs away, and later says, "The reason I can't come to you is I don't have a bond with you." And that was a dagger through the heart. She loves mom, and she's a tough nut to crack. And I have great relationships with the other two. But it does feel as though there's this challenge of breaking through. That hurt. Then I took my son to get his learner's permit at the DMV. And boy, that sucked. So they wouldn't give him the learner's permit because they said we had a copy of his birth certificate, which made me flip out, and I immediately blamed my wife, because my wife is not very detail oriented. But I'm lashing out and I'm having a resentment and I'm blaming. And when I talked to her about it, as angry as I was, I held myself in check. So there's that. And I felt awful that he had this experience, this life experience here where he should have gotten this permit and he didn't. I'm very good at being action oriented. So after I dropped him off, I went right to the town hall to get the copy with the stamp. Right. And they looked at the copy I had and they're like, that's a wet signature. That's not a copy.
Oh, really?
You have an original.
Yeah.
Somebody just didn't stamp it. So that made me angry. And of course, I called my wife and I'm like, I want to apologize. You have done nothing wrong. It was the DMV's fault. The good news there is the town of South Windsor didn't charge me. Right. Like, we're just going to give it to you. You already had one, which was incredible kindness. My wife is not great with the garbage disposal. Like, she feels everything can go down it. And I saw her putting down about 1.5 pounds of pasta all at once, and it clogged.
Yeah.
And I couldn't plunge it. And so we have to get somebody out to snake it and there's already a leak there, and I'm afraid we're not going to be able to afford it, or there's going to be something even bigger, and we haven't had a sink for a couple days. They're coming tomorrow, but I haven't had a sink for a couple days. And you take that for granted,
Right.
of like, we're running up to wash things in the tub, in the bathroom sink. And you start thinking through, what should I make? What should I not? Should we get the paper plates out? And I just have been grumpy, and I haven't been able to get my walks because it's been rainy, and that rainy doesn't do anything. And she's like, you're snappy at me. You're snappy at the kids. You have no patience. And she's right. And that's the thing that makes me feel terrible. So it's not just life on life's terms in these moments. I could look at that. Okay, rough patch. I look at it as, now it's doom.
Right.
This is the time it will fall apart.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I suffer from that same syndrome. I don't know if there's a name for it. But I suffer from that too, that when things go bad, and it's one of the reasons why I do. It's one of the reasons why I have this, I have a yo-yo dieting thing. I have had it my whole life.
Me too.
Where I could get down. I was just thinking about it like years ago when I first started really getting in shape. As a matter of fact, it was my hiking that, I literally, I don't want to oversell it, but I was really, really put myself in a bad situation when I hiked Mount Washington the first time. Really bad. I cramped up. I wasn't in shape. I was heavy. I won't say that I put myself in a bad situation, and it could have turned really, really ugly. I got to the point where I couldn't climb more than a minute or two without my legs cramping, and it's dangerous up there, right? Weather was fine. We were able to get through it. But I'll tell you, heavy rains came in a couple hours after we got to the hut where we were staying. It could have been very, very ugly. My hiking partner at the time said that he was looking for places that we could set up our shelters and try to hang out for the night. I mean, it was pretty bad. And as much as, as much as I do that, so I've been to the point where I've been down. I've literally been down 40 pounds from where I am now. Mm-hmm. Now that probably was too light for me, probably wasn't, but my point is, so I'm able to do that. So I'm saying I'm able to do that. I'm able to focus and do that and get in shape and have a closet full of clothes that fit me at that point. And then look at all those clothes and will I ever get in those clothes again? Because I swing it back the other way. Because what happens to me is once I start going bad, I say, fuck it, Mm-hmm. And I say, why bother? Or I'll get depressed, or just like you said, things aren't going well at home, right? I'm not getting my way, whatever it might be. And then I just tumbled down this thing like, oh, the world's ending, so I might as well just, eat Little Debbie's and just watch TV all day, which is not what I do. But I just make bad choices. Yeah, I make bad choices. And again, that's that was one of my whole things with alcohol, my alcoholism too. And that's why alcohol, we talk about it all the time. Alcohol was a symptom.
Absolutely.
And it was two things. It was a symptom and a solution, which is it was a symptom of the problem that I had some other shit going on, and I just needed to fix that stuff. And that's what I work on today on a regular basis. I try to fix that stuff on a regular basis because for me, when I fixed it, it doesn't mean it's gone. It means it's still there. I'm just managing it. And then it was a solution that when I felt really, really bad, it was a way to make me not care about feeling bad and not feel that bad. So, and so that's all these things that we're talking about for me is a history of how my addiction played throughout my life. I spoke a week ago, last Sunday, I spoke at a place, and I talked about it, and it was interesting because I spoke up by in Stores, which is where the University of Connecticut is, and it just hit me. I was up there in May, and I graduated from there. And when I graduated from UConn, it was literally, and I talked about this. It should have been the pinnacle. It should have been the start of a great career. I had an electrical engineering degree, and it was the beginning of my slide into really, really bad alcoholism. 5 years later, I was just out, man, and I just talk about how, all of these things that I've tried to done, like all of these things that I've struggled with, have just carried on with me within this whole lifetime. So I just keep trying to, work on these things and manage these things. And I talk about, at about 6 years of my first sobriety, I was really unhappy, and I decided to get a divorce, right? And it's like, that's the type of thinking that happens in my head when I'm not working on things. So anyway, it's a mess. It's really living life. Life is not easy, like we talk about. It's
No,
not
it's
easy, and for some of us who have addiction problems, it becomes even messier because we end up doing stuff that could affect not only our lives but the lives of a lot of people around us.
It can be more painful when things happen in life after you get sober because you've taken away a coping mechanism.
Right.
These are the things that you used to be able to drink over,
Yeah.
and I can't drink over it. And if I want to relieve that pain, there's a lot of things we can do.
Yeah.
The first thing for me is action. So I'm really good at that we needed to get a plumber. I was all over it. Boom, I put everything aside, and in crisis moments, this is really where I'm best of give me the name of a plumber, I'll call him. The plumber said, I don't go behind the pipes, but I have another guy. Boom, right. I'm right on the phone with that guy.
Yep.
And my wife was whiny when I told her it was going to take 2 days. And it was like, we're calling on a Friday.
Right.
You're not going to get somebody today. Monday is acceptable because we have a weekend in the middle. To me, that's acceptable. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
This is realistic stuff. I was great right when we got home we left the DMV. I went right to town hall. Boom, I'm going right to town hall. I got $20 in my pocket. That's what it costs. I'm just going to get this done. And I got it done.
Right.
But it's still getting through that period of time, being up late. So I forgot that other things happened, that my middle daughter had anxiety. She was up all night. So I have been, on top of all of this, I've been spending a couple of days just trying to catch up on sleep. So it hasn't been great sleep because of stress. And then trying to catch up on sleep from the other kids, from the stuff that they're doing. So all of this stuff as well. My sister-in-law is in the hospital. They screwed up at Hartford Hospital with her, sent her home a bunch of times, said, we sent her home because she was up and walking. That's funny. She doesn't walk. So that's a problem.
Yeah.
So it's like all of this stuff, and it just feels like everything's going to fall apart, and I can't go exercise because I'm tired, and it's rainy, so I can't go for a walk. And it will never change. We will never see the sun.
Right. Hey, I was disappointed. Listen, we went hiking. My recollection was this weekend was supposed to be dry and not so much nice, but dry. And I didn't cut my lawn on Friday because I'll go hiking Saturday. Mm-hmm. I'll let it dry out. We've had some rain. I'm like, I'll let it dry out because it's pretty high. And then I'll cut it Sunday. And that's not happening. So I got home yesterday and my wife said, you guys made out okay? And I'm like, yeah, it just started raining when we got off the mountain yesterday. And I'm like, she said, it rained out here, rained all day here. And I'm like, shoot, man, that's not what I was planning. But again, that's just what it is. I mean, it's part of that is, the other part of is what we're talking about is, we sort of project what we want our life to be. We make these right? We project that our life should go this way, and that's really where we get into trouble. Like when we start thinking this is the way it should go, and I know that gets me in trouble. And when it doesn't go that way sometimes, and I've done a good job with that, but I'll still get tripped up with that. Like my lawn. And I feel bad about my lawn, not because I don't give a shit about my lawn, but I do have neighbors and I care about my neighbors and I don't want my lawn to look too shitty because we're all just trying to have it look decent. So, but, and I just want to touch base on this. A couple things on it, just a side note. It's like I've learned over the years is that I need to find my contractors, like the plumbers or whatever, and I need to when I have work, give that contractor all that work, not worry about what I'm paying that contractor, because in a situation like yours, I want my contractor to show up, right? And if you have a relationship with them, and I've done that with the guys. I used to have a really, really bad problems with my sewer backing up. I've talked about it on here. My sewer, my line would back up into my basement. I've had my guy come out at 10 o'clock at night and do it, like, because I've paid him $300 every time he comes out to do it, right? But he showed up. And it's a pain in the ass, and you can get people to do it, even something like what you're doing. But yeah, you're going to pay through the nose if you want somebody to come over on the weekend, right? I mean, and I've stopped, just the other thing, I've stopped using my garbage disposal because of that exact thing. I just feel like, it's just a pain. It's just a pain, and my kitchen sink, the drain on my kitchen sink goes about 40 feet before it connects to the outlet. That's a long drain. I remember the first time I got here, we had an old dock garbage disposal, and he had to do that. It's a long drain to snake. And after that, I started thinking it was clogged. I pretty much stopped using it. And now the great thing is, again, just digressing here, but our town, I think South Windsor might have it too, but our town just started this whole food scrap program where you can collect all your food scrap, not just in this energy thing, everything. And you can bring it to a thing, you can dump it. So all of my food scrap now goes to sort of a recycling energy type of thing. None of it goes down the drain or in the garbage anymore. So
food doesn't for me. I have a bunch of compost bins in the back.
Right.
So the vegetable scraps I can put out there, but not the food stuff. So this is I can feel the darkness welling within me when you said that about the garbage disposal.
Yeah.
Because I do, for the most part, throw out my scraps, which my wife doesn't like.
Yeah.
And we have had 104 conversations when the garbage disposal has been clogged, which I usually can get unclogged.
Right.
About you cannot throw everything in the garbage disposal. And when you do, you've got to do it in bursts. And we will have this conversation, I'm sure, 105, 106, 107 times. And that's the thing that fries me. Like, we keep having this discussion. And she turns to me, she goes, well, I forgot.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, she's also been exhausted. I suspect that with what I hear with her, the choking and gasping when she's sleeping, but she's told me, oh, that's just because it's been humid out.
Right.
She's not sleeping properly, and I can those times where my wife doesn't sleep well, the decisions that she makes are befuddling, and they're befuddling because she can't process things exhausted, as most people can't.
Yeah. Listen, and what you just said is one of those frustrations. What we're talking about, right? Life is hard. It's not easy. Like that's one of my frustrations too. Is like, having the same conversation, and it works both ways. Like, it doesn't just work for me and my wife having a conversation. That's something I want her to do. She has things that she'd like me to do better, and I get it. We went to, couples counseling for a long time, and one of her points was the fact that my wife still uses a paper calendar, and it's how she organizes her life, and she is really, really good at it. Everything she has goes on this calendar. It is how she stays organized. She almost never misses an appointment because of it. I, on the other hand, don't do that well, and we've literally had this conversation many times in couples counseling, and I just had to say, listen, it's not something I do well. I'll try to do it better, but it's just not something. And I have gotten better at it, but still not to her liking, because a lot of times I'll make my appointments and put them right on my phone, right? And sometimes I don't always see those notifications at all, but and I forget to come home and transfer them over to the thing. But so it goes both ways, that we have these same conversations over and over and over again. Like I said, when our sewer line was backing up, like, listen, I don't want to gross anybody out, but it was not a pleasant thing that I, unfortunately, not unfortunately, but I cleaned up, right? I didn't call the company in to clean it up because it happened several times before we finally decided, okay, we have to get this thing fixed. And we had plenty of conversations about what could not go down in the toilet, and it would be like this, and it would be like the same thing, like, oh, I forgot, or this. Yeah, it's easy for you to say you forgot while I'm downstairs cleaning up a mess, right? And you're not down there doing it. So it works both ways, and that is the frustrating thing. And that's the thing that for me, that's the thing for me. I would have absolutely pounded myself drunk over some of those conversations. I would have got so frustrated over a simple little thing like not having the right birth certificate, and I would have just pounded myself into oblivion over that little thing. I
would have pounded myself into oblivion because we had the right birth certificate,
right?
But it didn't. The person who gave that gift certificate, that birth certificate to us, didn't stamp. So it's a comedy of errors. Like there are many checks along the way that got broken.
Yeah,
there were so many things that went wrong, or not just the drinking, it's the explosion, the anger explosion.
Right. Yeah.
And absolutely. The one thing I was happy about is as angry as I didn't lose it.
Yeah, I still need to work on that. I still, most of the time I can check that, but not all the time. And that's still frustrating and disappointing to me. It's funny because we got a Life on Life Terms trip today, my wife and I. My wife bought a watch a while back. She wanted a new watch. I don't use a watch. I have a watch that I use for hiking and stuff sometimes, a Garmin watch, but that's all because I got my phone. And but she wanted one. She likes to wear a watch. So we bought one, I don't know, 5-6 months ago from Macy's, and it stopped working. So she paid a decent amount of money for it. Not a lot, but, several $100, almost $300. And so we went back to Macy's, and they're like, we went to the local one. They're like, oh, yeah, you're past 37-day, return policy, but we'll do it because they're struggling. Like they're willing to bend over backwards. And my wife buys stuff in there. So they're like, oh, yeah, we can do it. And we don't have any of the same. She wanted the same watch. We don't have any. I can order it for you. Blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh, we don't have them, but West Farms does it. And, a few towns over. And like, so we're scheduled to go to West Farms. So I told my wife, like, they were willing to do that at the Macy's, but they don't have to take your watch back. It's past the 37-day return policy. And
right.
And I'm like, the next step is you got to return it to, Citizens or whoever it was, right? Like that's the thing. She's like, oh yeah, like so we can get down. This is my point. We can get down to the store, and sometimes it's a clerk by clerk or manager by manager decision.
Absolutely,
right. So that one up in the local mall was willing to do it. We may get down there today, and they may decide it's past our thing. We're not going to exchange this thing. You're gonna have to send it back in. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out today. And I already know that in my head, but, she might be disappointed. But whatever it is, it'll turn out. It's not the end of the world for us. But it's one of those things. And those were the things that used to frustrate the shit out of me. Just like, you said, that the DMV, all these things, it's literally sometimes it's just a matter of who you're interacting with. And that's one thing I try to remember. I'm really a lot better at it today. I really typically have a lot more empathy and kindness to the people I interact with than I used to have, especially like in a retail world where these people don't make any type of money.
Right.
They're out there in the public. They're getting all this shit from the public day in
dealing with
day
Karens
out.
all day.
Right. And so I do try in those situations to be a lot more pleasant than I used to be. I still can get frustrated like the rest of us, but I work hard and not taking it out on some poor little clerk who has no ability to make any real decisions. Maybe the manager does, like this one did, but so I don't get too frustrated about it and just move on and try to I saw this thing on social media about the Stoics in the past famous Stoics, and one of the things that rang out to me is that it said, and I forget who it was, I got to go back and look it up, everyone that I come in contact with today deserves kindness, right?
Absolutely.
Think about that, right? Everyone that I come into contact with today deserves kindness. That's what I like to strive to live for, that way of life.
Is that really a Stoic thing? Because I've been doing that for years. Like if I come into contact with people, I think through what can I do to be nice to this person?
Right. It's where I heard it. Maybe it's not a Stoic thing, but it's where I heard it. It was attributed to one of the Stoics, but yeah, I don't know. It just stuck with me, and I just thought that's what I have to try to strive for, right? Because I can, and again, I work really hard. It's not as bad as it used to be, but I work really hard as being pleasant, not being a jerk asshole. Like I could really be, I could really be an unpleasant person. That's one of the things that Steps did for me, right? I mean this honestly. I always thought I was a nice guy, and most people would tell you that I'm a nice guy. They would. Most people would say, "Oh, he's a nice guy. He does this. He does, help you out." But the truth is, I was a real jerk very often to a lot of people, and the Steps pointed it out to me, and that's what I work on not being today.
The Steps have really taken away from me being a jerk because it's taken the fun out of it. That the Steps tell me, if you're a jerk, now you got to do something about it, or else you might drink. And I don't even think of I might drink. It's just that feeling of, it's the muscle memory. I don't even think about the steps with that. It's, you've done this, now you have to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, not only may I drink over it, but it just tells you you got to apologize. It tells you got to apologize. You got to make an amends over it, and you got to do something about it, right? Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right that our program tells us that that you just can't be a jerk and walk away from it. That it's really, again, it's a symptom of the problem, right? So that was a symptom of the problem, and then we used to drink, and now we have another solution. So when we have that problem pop up, which is a character defect problem, now we have other solutions that we need to employ. And the trick is, if we don't employ those other solutions, eventually, for many of us, we'll go back to that original solution, which we used to drink over.
So there are solutions out there. Meditation, prayer, going to a meeting, calling somebody and sharing the story, doing step work. These are things that will get you through. Sometimes it's slogans. This too, it used to piss me off when John would tell me things like, "This too shall pass." And he's right. This too shall pass. I won't be worried about this 6 months in the future. I won't be thinking about it. I'll be thinking about something else. What are the things that get you through on life's terms? Or the things that are about when things are crappy in the moment? What gets you through? How do you get through this stuff sober? Give us a shout out. You can reach out, Instagram at SoberFriendsPod, or you can email me, Matt at SoberFriendsPod. And Steve, thanks for helping me. Thanks for being a sounding board here.
Hey,
because this helps me too.
The universe is our sounding board on this podcast. Thanks, Matt.
You're welcome. And everybody, will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
You made it this far into the podcast. That tells me you're a pretty big fan. If you like what we do and you find value in the podcast, consider a donation at buymeacoffee.com/SoberFriendsPod. Your donation keeps us on the air to help out the new guy and helps us defray some of our costs. If you find value in our podcast, please consider a donation at buymeacoffee.com/SoberFriendsPod.